Welcome back to Lofty Darwinism. In a strange twist of irony, after the absolute loudest movie that I have ever seen in my entire life, we are having some technical difficulties, and Matt Lofton's normally booming voice is coming in very quietly on my end.
Yeah, I mean, the sound was one of the takeaways from the Odyssey, I would say, and that's what we're here to discuss. Both of us have finally watched it. It came out this weekend, so it's basically the fastest I've watched a movie from opening day since I was in my 20s, at least. Right? I think what's interesting about it, because we'll talk about Nolan. I think I want to talk about Nolan in general, about like who he is as a filmmaker, this movie. But what was interesting is, like, I've seen a lot of the Nolan films, not the entire Nolan, canon. And it's interesting to me how his continued peak as a filmmaker arguably coincided with my continued drop in watching films. Right? Like,
Okay.
maybe just the accessibility to them. Because I was asking Lauren, and it was Lauren too. She's like, I haven't seen most of those, and I was like, okay, so you don't know who he is. I mean, he's bigger than he's a bigger cultural force. I feel like right now, as far as like stylistically and what people think, than even the number of his movies that you've seen, to some degree.
Mhm.
What is your
Yeah.
thoughts on Nolan before we go forward on this particular movie?
I mean, we don't have another artist like him. I think there is a kind of legacy that Tim Burton has, that Spielberg has, like that some of these guys that like a lot of people still know who they are. A lot of my students are big Tim Burton fans, even if they haven't really made, I mean, Wednesday kind of was a big deal, but like, I feel like Tim Burton hasn't had like a mega movie hit since like a while. Let's just say a while, a pretty long
Right.
while. Back when Chris Nolan was doing the Batman movies, like it was like nobody else was doing that. Like no one else was making comic book movies the way that he made them. Like um Batman Begins was 2006, I want to say.
Yes. Yeah.
2007 to 2006, 2007. Iron Man was 2008. And so Marvel kind of started to track their own, comic book legacy, starting with Iron Man. I think it could be argued. But the 2000s were ruled by like the X-Men movies, which were technically Marvel, but they didn't have like that feel.
There's Sony.
Um,
Yeah.
but really, Chris Nolan's Batman was like the one that everyone said, like, wow, these are insane, you know?
Yeah.
And that allowed him to make Inception, which was like that was like the thing that kicked it all off. Like the idea that Chris
Mhm.
Nolan could just cook, and you'd spend
Yeah.
a lot of money, and we would just go see what he did. And he's more or less been hit or miss, with the exception being Tenet, which came out during COVID.
Some people love that movie. Some people
I love that movie too.
I mean,
Yeah, I love
The
I actually think
Prestige. I think The Prestige is one of my all-time favorites.
yeah,
Like
Prestige, absolutely amazing.
so he really does make amazing movies. Like I don't think I've watched all of Interstellar.
That's my
I'm
favorite.
not 100% sure I still understand Inception, and I'm not 100% sure he does either. Like, because I think there's times where he can get out. He's playing with memory in like a Proustian way, which is, in the way in which, like, that's, I think, what, when we get to the Odyssey, I do appreciate as well. I know that source material pretty well from various versions of it. He didn't tell it linearly in a way I haven't really seen done, which
Mhm.
is actually the better way to tell it through, without it feeling like, hey, here's a flashback movie, guys. And that's so hard to pull off. And I think if he hadn't had all the memory movies and Inception and the way he plays with time as a director, like, applying that to the one of the oldest stories, I think, is very interesting.
Yeah, I think you know I felt frustrated at times, but I ultimately like walked out of the movie feeling really good about the structure of it, about how he
Mhm.
put it all together. And I think one of the things in particular that the kind of like jumping around really helped with was like to specifically bring some sense to the Calypso
Mhm.
section, because that one always just was weird to me. It's like a series of unfortunate events befalls Odysseus, and one of those
Yeah.
unfortunate events is that he just randomly spends 7 years, with this beautiful
Hooking up
woman.
with it's, I mean, and the lotus flower thing is that's a Greek thing. I think what's so interesting is he Trojan horse the idea that Trojan horses are bad through this whole understanding. He brings back very explicitly like the golden rule, which would be given to Jesus as Zeus's law. People understand what we were trying to say. And I
Hmm.
think understanding the cleverness and being its own, like, a person who claims to uphold Zeus's laws is high. Like, he also, out of pure frustration with 10 years of war, breaks it at a fundamental level, which has continued to be broken every moment since.
Hmm.
Through
Yes.
now, every version of our warfare is Trojan horsing. It is violating trust between humans to gain advantage and conquer or attack or gain power.
Yeah.
And that's hard and that's bad. It's not, it has deep consequences we need to work on.
Yeah. And I felt that theme to be quite moving. And it was really the first time that I think an Odyssey depiction, because I've seen, like, I feel like two movies, like, and Oh Brother Where Art Thou, like,
That was
but
great.
it was the first time they really hammered on, like, the Zeus's law thing. But that is apparently in the source material. Like, it's a key aspect of why he goes through the journey that he goes through. But apparently in the source material, it isn't the Troy thing that where he breaks Zeus's law. It's the Cyclops.
Well, that he breaks, I think, a number of times. I think
Well, but
overall,
very
it's
specifically,
specifically the
um,
Cyclops
the Cyclops also, by the way, breaks Zeus's law because Zeus's law is that you're supposed to.
treat.
Apparently, it's called Xenia, right? Like Xenia. You're supposed to greet your guests and feed them and shelter them. The Cyclops
Yes.
eats his guests, so that's not exactly Zeus's law.
No. And I do think what is also interesting is that maybe the reason we don't get that version of it is because it might unravel the Jesus narrative a little bit, or at least reinforce it in a way they're not prepared to handle. That what he was bringing as far as a teaching was very much closer to that, which he was literally explicitly trying to be. You have to treat the other as yourself, right? That's the Good Samaritan thing. That's all of this. That if you don't, like, that what you do for the least of me, you do for me, right? If God could show up like Jesus in a regular human's body and you treated that person badly, like, that's on you. And anyone could be that person. Anyone could, and you could be that person too. And that's the update, right? But if we really explored that was also a Greek idea, which people have explored, but it's not hugely in the public consciousness, it would unravel some things about the way we in American Christianity, some people want us to view Jesus and view that story and view what he was trying to say. And I think there's some deliberateness there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is an idea that existed in 1100 BC, so it clearly is a section of thought that existed that predates the Bible.
Yeah.
Um, but it also, I think this is a sort of like more modern retelling of it because there are other competing value systems other than just sort of Xenia, Zeus's law.
Yeah.
Like there's honor and things like that. And I think that is kind of where Odysseus, like, so apparently there's this whole pun, right, that happens
Yeah.
in the Cyclops in the original story where he tells the Cyclops, he converses with the Cyclops and he says, my name is Nobody. And when the Cyclops is chasing them blind, he's yelling, "Nobody hurt me," and other Cyclops are being like, "What the hell is this?"
Mm-hmm.
And then on his boat, Odysseus turns around and he says, like, "My name is Odysseus," and then that allows the Cyclops to curse him and call on Poseidon, his father, to to do to him what he ends up doing.
Yes.
But in the original Greek, apparently, the word "nobody" is a very similar word to the word Odysseus in Greek, and so there's like a little bit of wordplay that I think was going on throughout that original
Yeah.
thing. But it's when he arrogantly names himself,
Yes.
that is the actual thing that apparently Odysseus does. It's not stabbing the Cyclops eye out because I guess he was just defending himself. But when he dishonored the Cyclops afterwards, that was the thing that caused all his woes.
Right. For his personal woes. I
Yeah.
think what the interesting part is that he's grappling with his idea being the beginning of broader humanity's woes. Like
Yes.
the idea that it's okay to do what they did in Troy, to
Mhm.
get that thing under the guise of gift, and for it to be a poison gift. That was a new, or not new, but it was such a deep violation that violation caused the idea there are people from the sea, which are just other people just like them, which is how we are now. And so yes, his personal hubris, and there's so much of that in the book, which is usually where it's interpreted like he's so smart, but the little ways in which he just has peak or has hubris always damn him. And so, yeah, personally, that's how Poseidon got him. But that cleverness in trying to win a war that violated the like fundamental trust, even in a competing situation,
Yeah,
is
it was a
so important.
a dishonorable tactic, which I think is fairly foreign to us because I mean, if we look at any of the wars that are happening right now, Sudan, Israel, or Ukraine, I don't think anybody can claim to be fighting particularly honorably.
No,
Like it's because that's what war does to you, and I think that this is what is the most powerful thing about this movie is that it posits this myth of the Bronze Age as being this sort of like semi-utopian, peaceful era prior to its collapse, which again, like I never really thought much about the Bronze Age collapse, but it was pretty
yeah,
crazy.
it's
Like,
massive.
do you know? Because okay,
I
so
do know a
Egypt,
decent amount ish about it.
yeah, Egypt goes silent around this. So, like all these civilizations around the Mediterranean, they all like basically go dark around the same time for like 400 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's Egypt, it's Greece, it's
Assyria comes afterwards. Babylon. There's like a bunch of them around there, but what is interesting is it's a global collapse. Like it is
mhm,
this trade network that had built up, and it was also coming at the end of. There's a combination. It happened over time, right? You had the end of the ice age happening, which was slow and fast all at once, right?
mhm,
Slow stuff happening, so you got the sea levels rising. So I'd rather go back to even thinking about like the Aboriginal cultures in
mhm,
Australia and even actually in Northern Europe for Doggerland discuss in their myths places that are not on land anymore and are just off the coast close to the continental shelf because so much ice
mm,
melted and raised the sea levels, right? Because where are most of our cities now? Near the coast. Our biggest cities are within 50 miles of the coast almost all the time, right? If
yeah,
not closer. And so you see that like this happens, it changes the area during a giant ice age, which would be okay, would be the Middle East, would be those areas, right? There's this massive amount of change. We lose a huge amount of megafauna, like so we lose the saber-tooth tiger, we lose the woolly mammoth, we lose these giant animals that are just
mhm.
huge. And so
Man-eating
there's a
kangaroos in Australia.
yes, it's nuts. But what we also have to think is like we built to here from there in X number of years. It's not that long. That's the number of times we could have gotten to some version of global society in 10,000 years at a time is pretty high. Because without ever noticing it, like what would be noticed if it was all washed away? And the way in which we joke about we people think about science fiction really discussing how the future will become. But I might argue in a very funny way that the Flintstones was closer to how the past was, right? Our understanding of like how you use or like we're working with these giant animals or accepted them being around you and the way in which we built mega structures that we still don't understand, the way we have these just the way in which humans were human on the earth even though they were the same basic human was different. And you have tales of and so we get to this Odyssey piece, which is the closest thing we have that's not the Bible to a relic from that time, to telling us about the downfall. That's it is it's the next step of the flood myth to some degree, right? It's after that, here's where we're building back humanity, right? And so the flood, your Bronze Age, you get these buildups, and it's any number of massive climate change changes everything. And the Bronze Age collapse is huge. Egypt was a state in decline by the time a lot of that was there. It's not, they didn't keep building
Yeah.
bigger shit.
I mean, I still it boggles the mind that the pyramids were built like 2,000 years before that. Like, it was. I'd have to get the exact date, but like yeah, the
We had mound builders in the United States. People don't talk about. There was massive, like they've understood that the people of the Baja Coast in California and that came from an islands that don't exist in the Pacific Ocean anymore, right? Like there are just things about the way humans humaned across the earth that we have lost. There's an interesting deal about how the genetic diversity inside Africa is significantly higher than the rest of the world. So the diaspora genetic diversity is way smaller than the African internal diversity like that you have, even if they look the same to us or whatever. It's the actual types of human are more diverse in that, in what the range of possibility. And I just think the Odyssey connects us back to the fact that even in that, we're all still very human. We're all still struggling with our choices, struggling with a journey, struggling with knowing you really can't ever go back home.
And
And you
that's
might
one
not
of the
want
interesting
to.
things about the fact that it was like this colorblind cast with American accents. Like these were very much like, you know, these are just like regular dudes playing these roles. Like these are like people, you know, acting like themselves as though it was like a high school production. And when you like map that onto this huge IMAX experience, it makes for a really interesting kind of like, you know, reminds me of the theater of movie making, you know, like that this is a
Yes.
performance, this is kind of a play, you know, playtime activity for us, but like we're pulling out all the stops, we're going big, but we're also going to make sure that you understand and you can recognize. And then when you go see Minalaz, like he's just going to be like a tough dude, you know, like he's not going to
Yes.
be putting on some British accent or anything
Well,
like that.
I think so. I saw something recently about that was talking about the movie A Knight's Tale with Heath Ledger.
Oh, I
And
love that movie.
it's amazing. And what they talk about is how the environment and the way that they actually wardrobe everybody in the church, it's the most accurate version of the times. But then they throw in rock music to get you to understand the feeling of the times in an accurate, which is it's a little bit what this movie did. It got
Mhm.
the feeling of the times, but the only way you would get that true feeling is for it to feel like you too, right? It had to put our language in their world, and their world had to look accurate and be accurate. But the only way we were going to feel that accuracy or for it to matter was for the language and to bring us into that. And
Yeah.
I think he did a great job of that.
Mhm.
Somebody said he didn't use anything that wasn't any musical instruments that weren't around back then.
That's
And
definitely not
something, so I
true.
was like,
Like I've been listening to the soundtrack and I've been like,
I was
wow,
like,
this.
I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was like, that seems crazy. I want to know if that's true or not. Again, like we have the internet. I got told this fact about 10 minutes before this podcast. And so we do need to check that. But like, it's also understanding that more was possible in the world back then than we give it credit for. Islander nations, there was like people who could literally sit back on their rafts just like Odysseus did, but they can read the stars and use the currents,
Right.
in the Pacific. And we don't appreciate it how many satellites are in orbit right now, and how many more are, and how hard it is to see the stars like you used to, and how hard like that actual navigation would be for people now. But it's a different form of technology, it's a different form of humanity, it's a different form
Yeah.
of
I mean,
connection.
it's definitely true that like as technology progresses, our collective understanding of the world, you know, moves to more abstract knowledge based stuff or like sort of like intellectual stuff and less kind of practical things. You know, David wait, gosh, what's his last name? Guns, Germs and Steel, Jared Diamond. Jared Diamond.
Yeah.
You know, because he was like, as you were talking about, like the megafauna and kind of like which, you know, like how that a lot of that went away. That's basically his argument in that book that, like, you know, hey, different civilizations had different access to types of weather and seeds and megafauna and things like that. But at the end of it, he kind of talks about like, you know, like the native tribes of New Guinea and
Mm-hmm.
how they can distinguish between killer like dangerous mushrooms and mushrooms that you can eat, like, you know, and all the various things that
Yeah.
you need to know in order to survive. And it's the type of thing where, boy, you can imagine like the type of intellect, like the type of stuff you had to know to be able to go to sea in that era. Like, still, you know, even still to go to sea, but like, you know, to go out on a journey, boy, like
It's
that
insane.
that was
It's insane.
insane.
There's a BoJack line that will stick with me for the rest of my life about BoJack's asking his dad, "Do you take the Panama Canal or do you go around the Horn?" Like, when he's like, "Take the canal." He's like, "No, you go around the Horn." It's like, that's a death journey. Like, around the Horn of South America is some of the most treacherous waters in the world. So, like, the idea that humanity was so gutsy at the time to be like, well, staying here doesn't really matter. I'm going to
Like
go there.
how did the Polynesians make it all the way over to Hawaii and then like Easter Island? Like I still just do
Well,
not
again,
understand that. Like
well,
somebody had balls of steel.
there's part of that, but also it depends on when they got there, because you also think about there was a large continent in the middle of the Pacific, similar to the Atlantic. There are areas that were not submerged, right? There were areas that were much lower, so people could walk across them. People could have, like, the world looked different than it does now. And that meant that the way people interacted was different, the way they had to work through things. But the stuff you can find that is in South America and Egypt and places it just shouldn't be suggests a global trade network that rivals ours, or probably closer to like Rome plus South America being thrown in there, which they weren't really contacting with. I mean, the number of people who died just from, they talk about guns, germs, and steel, just from us showing up here because we had domesticated so many animals in Europe and Asia that they had not, and it just created waves upon waves of diseases that they had not had until they
Yeah.
built up immunity. That, like, that's different, and it sucks. And like, as much of the actual murdering as we did, we like were just stupid virus carriers too, and it justified, like, well, I guess I've got, it what we don't know about this continent and these both continents is so vast.
Yeah, and like so there's the domestication of like these large animals, which I obviously was like a huge part of what allowed us to develop so rapidly, but also like just knock onto that, then suddenly we're all urban dwellers, like we're like densely packed, and what does that lead to? Rats. Like it
Mm-hmm.
leads to a ton of rats, which is basically I think what caused the bubonic plague, was that it like
Yes.
like it allows for this sort of like concoction of these deadly diseases that wipe out. And do you think that also was a part of the Bronze Age collapse, was like some disease that but like what I love is that
Probably.
so many people take seriously the idea that it was really this mysterious sea people that led to the collapse. Like people just started coastal raiding all these people, and then just like they all just like
Well,
collapsed.
that's just been true through history, though. Like basically, and it usually happened out of like the Cossacks, out of like the Huns and the Mongols and a bunch of the Scythians. I think Scythians. Like, there's a ton of groups we've never even heard about, or we've heard
Mm-hmm.
about very barely, because they were living in really harsh places. They go, all right, boys, we're riding south, and then everybody south of them is kind of fucked. Like, and
Yeah.
that's what happened to Rome. So like, there was so much globe, so let's just say that, like, okay, so we have this collapse. In this one area, civilization builds back a little bit faster. The trade networks start working. But in the other areas, like a feral tribe version of humanity that has more of like like that older version stays there and then gets their own version of technologies they're building up, and has a kind of brute force that the current versions weren't used to. And it's that, I don't know how many times it probably has happened, but it's a lot of times that as we were getting to here, because that big circular globe was unknown, or as far as everything everywhere, like there's the Mongols can't show up in Russia tomorrow. Like there's nowhere, no one's coming from anywhere that we don't know about right now, unless it's aliens. But I'd argue that our alien story comes from, to some degree, the history of aliens inside our own globe who we didn't know, who came and were like, bye. Like, we want this town, we want this village, you're now ours. And that's a huge history of humanity.
Yeah, I imagine the Mongols in particularly just they take the cake in terms of just like wiping out an advanced society, or just like not even wiping them out,
Yeah.
just like taking them over. Like they just like
Yeah. Well, they were interesting because, like, some of the numbers were hype, and the way in which they kept the trade networks and built the trade networks and like decapitated like the royalty in places, and we're like, all right, the rest of y'all are up. It was a different type of empire,
Mhm.
underappreciated in our history, to be honest. Not that they appreciate it a good way, because like he's Hitler for the area. He's like a third of all people in China are related to Genghis Khan, or some crazy number, from like the level of he's the one who's having all the sex, apparently. Yeah, it's nuts. But that's, I think, what I want to go talk about these performances a little bit. I mean, to just get off of history, we'll never know. I want to go back to the movie. And let's just talk about each of the actors in this movie. And what did you think about them? Who would you want to start with first?
I think, one of the most amazing things to me was how kind of like just plain everybody felt, and I didn't even mind it. Like again, like it felt almost like it felt fundamentally like Chris Nolan stuck the landing on the most important thing was that I felt deeply moved by this guy's journey. Like especially like
Mm-hmm.
the Cersei stuff. Like I felt like the idea of like you're living in a like a destroyed world, and so you don't want to go reckon with that and what home looks like felt very like memorable to me. And in that regard, I think Matt Damon did great. Like he
Yeah.
really took on a protagonist that he didn't have the same swagger that Cillian Murphy had in Oppenheimer. Like you didn't go away being like, wow, what a performance by Matt Damon, but it was still a very good performance and exactly what the role needed.
It is, because it's said as it kind of in the first thing you hear from Odysseus. You're not always going to be the biggest or fastest or strongest. You got to be the smartest. And I think that that's why that performance works, because we can imagine other versions of Odysseus. Like, what if Christian Bale had been in this performance? Like, it would have been good, but by the end, I think it would have been like, oh, I hate this dude. Like, I think it would have felt insufferable. But
Mm-hmm.
Matt Damon had to be every single one of us in this journey. Matt Damon has to feel it. And the casting of Chalamet as his son has so many meta things about it.
Holland.
Chalamet, Holland. Why did I say Chalamet? Holland, yeah. I got Chalamet.
Yeah,
Holland,
understandable mistake.
Spider-Man got
Yeah.
cast in this.
Well, because like okay, so
yeah.
by the way, like Robert
right.
Pattinson is in the next Dune, I think, and
Yes.
then Zendaya was in that, and so you had a lot of like kind of franchise pairings that were all kind of like clustered around this movie, like so Zendaya and Tom Holland from Spider-Man,
Yes,
Zendaya and Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
So I can see shifting Chalamet
Yeah.
in there, but
I
by
don't
the
know,
way,
I'm
Holland
like,
did great.
I think he did an amazing job, and he's becoming more of an accessible actor. I felt like you could feel him grow in the movie, like you could feel his body grow, who he was on screen grow a little bit, and still not by the end not be a full king, not be like the perfect version. And I think that's the whole thing here is, and I would love to talk about Robert Pattinson here for
Yeah,
me,
boy, what a scene stealer.
also, he was, and I know he plays Batman, and I haven't seen that version. I've heard he's good in it, and they're gonna now that's been delayed till 2028. So we should talk about how long movies take to
Oh
make.
man, yeah.
But as I watched him, I thought, oh, this is maybe the only other performer I've seen where I thought, I want to see you play the Joker. I want to see you play the Joker in a different way than Heath Ledger, and I think he would be better at it. He's a great villain actor. He is a truly great villain actor. He's, and to let himself be that is so hard for people. Like so many actors in our past will never let themselves be the villain. They can't play that. They don't.
Has Matt Damon ever played a slimy villain like that? Like he was. I remember
Talented Mr. Ripley. It's one of his best performances.
I've not seen that one. I need to see that.
Oh, yeah. We have to do a rewatch of Talented Mr. Ripley. It is one of because it has Jude Law in it and what's his name? R.I.P. They're all doing amazing work. I'm thinking Seymour Hersh.
Is it Alan Rickman who's in it or
no? He passed away. He was in. He played Truman Capote. He played. He's one of our best actors. He died like 5 years ago, 7 years ago. You're gonna be dumb. It's gonna be very dumb when you can't like.
The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah, it's a hell of a cast.
Gwyneth Paltrow, she's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by Anthony Minghella, who did die. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Philip Seymour Hoffman. I was thinking, it was like Philip. I was like, he's Cy Hirsch. I was like, that's the name in my head. I know it's wrong.
I should have been able to guess that. Just like he's dead.
Philip Seymour Hoffman. Yeah,
right. He should have been my first guess.
Well, again, we just talked about Heath Ledger, so that was off the board. But that movie, Damon does that really well. So no, I think Damon will let himself play. Damon is is like that too. He also has the two greatest
Oh,
cameo
he was
appearances.
in Interstellar. He was a slimy villain in Interstellar. Yeah, he did
Oh,
a really good job in that.
yeah. I mean, he has the appearance in the small movie of Eurotrip where he's playing Scotty Doesn't
Oh yeah.
Know,
Oh yeah.
which is amazing. And then he shows up in the beginning of Ragnarok playing Loki in a play about Loki watching himself like in this way that it just being an
Oh yeah, I
actor.
remember we watched that together, and
He
I do remember that scene.
I think that that's just what's he doesn't take himself too seriously either, but he does take himself seriously. He doesn't take his performance self too seriously. He takes his life seriously. He's not out like Ben Affleck, J-Loing it up everywhere, right?
Yeah.
But he does not take anything sacred on screen. I think that's why he's one of our best actors. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and one of the things about like a movie like The Odyssey is that a lot of the roles, like 95% of the roles, are not roles that will reflect well on you as a performer. So like Anne
no,
Hathaway and Tom Holland, I think were both given very tough tasks because just the way those two
yeah,
characters like their journeys are like incredibly one-dimensional. It's very tough to play. And so I think they both did a really fantastic job of just kind of like suffering through those performances so that they could hit the beats they needed to hit, and it worked
yes,
wondrously.
yeah.
um
John
Samantha Morton
Leguizamo.
as Cersei, my God,
Yes.
that was she was real good.
Well, he got some real horror like
Yeah,
body elements, and I had to see it in the standard version just because timing, and I'm sad I didn't see it in IMAX. And there's part of me that wants to go all the way to the 70 millimeter one in Dallas.
I
That
kind of want to do that too.
I mean, if we could figure out how to do it, but those are going to be selling out for a while. What is crazy is we really can't make those anymore. We stopped making them. We don't have the supply chain for it, and so there's going to be about 50. And what's even crazier, and you can talk more about this, is like last week in San Antonio, 3 of them overheated because it's so much film going through there. It's like an insane process of inefficiency for art.
Yeah, I mean, like in 1915, 5 separate fires destroyed like all of cinema history, like basically
Oof.
just unrelated throughout the city of Los Angeles because film back in those days was just so highly flammable. Like the basic problem is that the same properties that make film reactive to light makes it an unstable element. So that's you're fundamentally
Yeah.
mixing silver crystals with some kind of a halide element, something that is very quick to release its bond the second that light hits it. So they've since made it less. Less dangerous. But yeah, I mean, film has always been this sort of like wildly dangerous format. I mean, like analog sound, I mean, nobody ever really thinks about it, but you're basically just talking about like one giant electrical bomb that like is constantly, like
Uh,
just like sending electricity everywhere. So yeah, I saw an image of like those of that giant. I mean, like if you have not seen it, you cannot your brain is not telling you how big it is. Like it's bigger than you think.
um, what I think is so crazy, I think what I was first awed by in the movie making process was, what was that was it Werner Herzog who built that whole ship to do that one movie that was like,
Oh yeah, Aguirre and the Wrath of God.
wait, but that's what this felt like
Mm-hmm.
through the whole. I was like, dear God, man, you scaled out these boats, like you built the things, like you. It was like really. I mean, I'm sure there was some blue screen and some CGI, and they're fixing some stuff, whatever. But it felt like, oh, you did a thing here that
Mm-hmm.
was substantial. And I think the only place where I would argue that they couldn't quite do that because you're not going to break real bricks was in the sacking of Troy,
Yeah.
because some of those things had to come down like that. It was like it needed to happen, but it was the only place where, because the scale on the boats and the
Mm-hmm.
horse had been so perfect and so real and visceral, that the buildings couldn't do that at the same level.
Well, it could have been a model. Like Hollywood has a lot of tricks up its sleeve, and I think that he he said in an interview, like, yeah, he uses CGI, like
Yeah, yeah.
but he just likes practical. If you like look at how they did the Cyclops, so I think some of the shots of the Cyclops is just a guy in a suit, but other of the shots, it's like you see there's massive like puppetry rig that they had going on. Yeah, I actually thought I went into it the most excited about the Scylla and Charybdis, kind of like what is he going to do with that? I walk out of it thinking like the sacking of Troy was definitely like the most cinematic like part of that movie. Like that was just stunning.
And I wonder if that's a little bit who directed the movie Troy. Go back to just want to see that.
Apparently, Chris Nolan at a for a hot second was attached to direct it, but I think in the end it was Wolfgang Peterson.
Okay, so I feel like this movie was in its nature directly in conversation with those choices. Right, those choices of what Troy was. You had Brad Pitt, nearly at peak Brad Pitt. I liked that movie. It was fun. It was high stakes because like everyone's using their British accents and blah. I mean, it was an epic movie in a way that like was a lot of fun back then. And this was the most impressive epic experience of the movie I've seen in maybe a long time. And it was for the opposite reasons of why Troy was fun
Mm-hmm.
and why Troy because it doesn't pretend that the war is good. Not that it doesn't glorify any of it. It doesn't downplay any of it. There's not a world where you come out going, man, I really hope to be in war. It's that the acceptance of life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think what makes Chris Nolan movies epic, like the fact that Oppenheimer, a movie about a scientist, was shot on IMAX and made $1 billion worldwide. Um, Part of it is that Chris Nolan is just really good at saying, like, hey, look, this is a big movie. Like, part of it just comes with saying out loud, we're taking this seriously. We're spending more money. We're actually doing, more things. Like, in a move that like never made any financial sense, but I'm glad that they did it. Like David Lynch quit the remake of Twin Peaks
Yeah.
because they wouldn't give him the money that he needed to do it, and so they eventually caved. And if you watch like Twin Peaks: The Return, like one of the reasons it's so good is because the scale of an 18-hour epic, with that type of money put into it, feels important. It feels impressive, and it feels impressive to watch, even if like Chris Nolan's filmmaking style could often feel a lot more intimate, a lot less flashy in a lot of the kind of like gimmicky tricks that Hollywood uses. Like he kind of tries to earn more specific types of cinema, like the
Yeah.
scene where like the storm finally takes his crew, like the sound during that moment. Did you feel your ears like
Intense. I was like, whoa.
blasting off?
Yeah, I found that was intense. I think that was, I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the cultural discourse, which was total bullshit around this movie
Yeah,
about
absolute
having
bullshit.
Elliot Page in the beginning. And I was like, for in the, so when after you go into it, that discourse is happening, right? So Elliot Page
Yeah.
is the beginning of the movie. Spoiler alert, she is gone like that. He is gone like that.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, did you just ice this character? Like, okay, I guess those idiots are happy, and then why do we do this? But then he's such a good director that when he comes back on screen in the death of the Hades scene, I think the Hades scene was just next level. And I think I felt like the portrayal of Agamemnon was also so good. I mean, we've seen guys, it was Darth Vader on screen.
Yeah.
Agamemnon was Darth Vader level of that, and it was. I just didn't think that you could do that anymore. I thought that like something like that would feel hack, would feel cliche, but that use of him. And then even human, making him human in the end with the way he dies, with the way you see him after death.
Chris Nolan is really good at kind of like making one good creative decision, and basically instead of being like, okay, and there'll be like 10,000 balloons and elephants and things like running around, he like no, I'm just gonna pick a really cool costume, and that guy, I'm just gonna parade him in front of you like 6 different times during the movie, and every single time you're gonna go, fuck yeah.
I mean, it's so simple, it feels dumb, but it was just like, damn, that helmet is cool. I am intimidated and worried, and like it's like the most basic filmmaking, and if you do it the wrong way, it doesn't work. But because he doesn't do it the wrong way. He does it the right way. He does it in a way that just it screams, dude, this is not someone I ever want to mess with. He doesn't have to talk about, the amount of, that the amount of things that could have been said on that screen about what was happening, right? The amount of dialogue and exposition they could have added to this that would have killed this entire vibe. Like the only thing that I forgot about was the Giants, and he did the second set of Cyclopses, the Cyclops cousins.
The left that starts with an L. It's like
I had
Lestrogians or something like that.
Right, they were this. I was like, whoa, where did these giant armor dudes come from?
Yeah, Lestrogonians. Lestrogonians.
It may not be the most like traditional choice there or whatever, but it really
because they were complete. They were like little miniature cyclopses in the poem, and they were cannibals. They ate most of his crew, and then they threw rocks at his ships.
Yeah, so it was an interesting choice to do it that way, and I think it was a good one because I think it also presaged the idea that there's bigger, faster, stronger technology coming for you in the future. Like your armor is going to seem real small compared to what's up, right?
Right, yeah. Like it was just a thankless, cold, like these people are just marching right up to
there's no motivation. There's no, like, he didn't have, it was like, oh, dear, okay, you're, all right, we're out. Again, could have been done so badly. Like it was a 3-hour movie, basically. They were just so hard to not make drag. And everyone knows how this ends. There's no plot twist to make a movie that is just truly, you're going to sit there and live with it is such an impressive feat, and it needed to be made.
And I thought that John Leguizamo did a really good job of basically like, kind of like tying a lot of that together, kind of like being the sort of like beating heart of his return.
The dog, the dog alone, man. I thought you couldn't get me with that. And I was like, oh my God. Like it was the moment
the dog was a Holland's big moment.
It just, and like, again, if I, as a political consultant, the easiest thing I can do to make someone likable is put them with the dog. He used every cliche in the history of the world to make this, and yet he used them at a level that is art, that is just pure, and why they are cliches, why they are the truth, why they are, and that's what you kind of had to do here. We've talked about this, that so much of life is understanding why the cliches are true. Like why the old wisdom you've received matters, not in the way maybe you received it, but understanding why, measure twice, cut once. These things that like, shit, man, like somebody, but you didn't understand it. And I think the Odyssey is one of the first tales like that for all of us to some degree. And this is you didn't understand it really before. Here's how you should think about this, or at least here's a new way to think about this without as much of the gods, and the gods are there, but they're not everything. It's humanity's choices in the face of whatever gods are.
On that note, I want to talk about one last kind of like theatrical performance that we haven't discussed yet, which was the Argentinian team during the World Cup. And, I have never seen a nastier football team. And I was rooting for them. I was like, I want to see Messi do it. But then once I saw them start to play, I was like, my God.
No, they are thuggery. It's pure thuggery. But again, it's their only way to win that game. And I think that is the thing and they had to maybe do a little more. They were tired, but they know their level of football versus the level of their opponents in every match. And they just knew Spain is the most frustrating game of keep away I have ever seen. Like if you were playing Spain, you just be like, I'm done. I'm just chasing up, already gone. Like they're playing keep away with their feet for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And like they didn't even like the reason that we underrate them was because like Lamal was a little bit hurt, right? And so he's not playing his best. And they don't have like a world class. There's not like a Holland on their team. There's not a Harry Kane on their team. There's not a Bellingham. There's not somebody who's just score. Yeah. No, there are 10 dudes playing keep away with more talent than you thought was possible. until you just like give up and die. Like it's, I mean, I think it was the game. Was it not Belgium? Maybe it was Belgium. Maybe the Belgium game. It was. They were tied close to the end, and I was like, it just the odds were still very much in their like favor online, even though they were like down or like it was the Belgium were down one, and I was like, they're casual, and they're just like done. All right, they just you saw from the moment that game started that they owned the ball. Like my friend Joe Palank, who you've met, was like, yeah, I didn't real like. I watched the United States. I thought everyone was kind of a similar level of talent now, like whatever. I wouldn't thought like, I no, Spain's like way more talented. It's like they're not more athletic; they're more ball knowledge-y. They're playing one way as a team.
Yeah, like they seem like they're very much in sync, and like our last episode unfortunately died at the hands of some technical glitch, but it
Yeah,
was right after the U.S. game, and Matt and I certainly did our grief dance
yeah.
with the United States. This game reminded me like that of like it was just so it was one sided in a way where like when you watch the ball go towards an Argentinian and you're like, and then just like a Spaniard just comes up and be like, no, I'll take that. Like it felt like the way Belgium destroyed us in the United States. Like it felt like that's what Spain did to the Argentinians.
By the end, yes, and they did it with less goals, which was kind of crazy. And a game that kind of reminded me of that was actually the semifinal game, which was England and Argentina. And England and Argentina was so interesting because while England came out the way they needed to, the second they got up, they turned into the United States like version of like it's like everyone's truest self is going to come out in the biggest moments of pressure in the World Cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for the United States, we had this giant distraction happen. We are off our game. We go from the most happy vibe to like what's happening, and then a team that is just flipped a switch just slaps us, right? And we don't get to rise, and they do. And England got to like we're one up. We should really do this, and then they just became England and decided to pull everyone back and let them shoot for 30 minutes, and you're like, this is bad. Like like anyone who's watched American sports, like, oh, prevent defense this early seems like a real bad call. It's not Mexico, it's Argentina. It's Messi, and you're just like, hey,
I remember that game. Like it was just like it was even like because as one sided as this final was, they still made it into extra time. Like there was a lot of like back and forth. Like the England game after that score, I felt like it was just 70,000 iterations of Argentina just stomping the ball at that goal. And and that was where you were like, okay, yeah, even though England's up, they're going to lose this game.
they did it well against Mexico, but Mexico is not Argentina. Mexico doesn't have the strikers. It's not the same thing.
Well, also, they did it later against Mexico, and they did it in the rain, down 10 to 10 men. Like, so,
it's so early. You need your second goal. It's like they took the idea of 2-0 as the scariest lead in soccer. So we don't want 2-0. We'll do it. Mm-hmm. Like, that's just a saying. You still want 2 goals. I don't care. You still need the second one. This would have been different. And I think it was also funny is watching. I did watch the bronze game, the third place game, which was one of the more fun games of the tournament.
Yeah,
to be honest
like
with you.
4-6. Like, what the heck happened?
It was the most England-France expression of cultural identity I've ever seen on a pitch, and it was so amazing because England's like, well, now that it's over, we're going to play like freaking rock stars. And France, they know it's over, and they do not care until they are down 4. I'm like, well, we have some French pride here, right, guys? And they only really wanted Mbappe to get his hat trick, which he gets. They get close, and then finally, again, when it doesn't really matter, England comes to their own rescue and does it right. And you're like, this is the epitome of these two nations playing each other. And it didn't get too contentious. There's not crazy stakes, which I think is why it could be that way. But like, if I just thought about two countries being themselves on the pitch, God, that was it. And that was so much fun, even though I didn't think it was going to be that much fun. Speaking of what was cool is there's usually a rule of, and we'll talk about this, blending the two subjects of the better the press tour, the worse the movie. And I would argue that Disclosure Day is going to go down in the history books, even though I haven't seen Disclosure Day, is like that's the peak because whatever. But Lupita Nyong'o goes on Trevor Noah's bronze medal watch party cast randomly. He's like, she just shows up on YouTube talking soccer for an hour and a half, or this game. And you're like, this is awesome. Like, I don't think she had to. The Odyssey's doing just fine, right? But that was a fun part of like, this is getting everybody in. This is getting everybody into this sport. It's good that we went out like this on some level. We have to care. We have to be pissed off. We have to see the levels. We're going to have to decide, are we going to play like a team? Are we going to get a national team that builds a style for our national team with our, or are we going to keep having amazingly talented guys? Because now we're getting there with like our top talents. Our top talents are playing at the top levels, but they don't play as a team together. That was France's problem as well. It's like, you got 6 guys on defense, and like you're playing like some people playing defense, some people playing offense. Spain, you're playing every single thing. You are where you're playing football, or soccer, whatever we want to call it. And it's definitional soccer, definitional football, definitional filmmaking to me in the last weekend. Really,
I do hope that we get a little more. I'm like I guess like America European kind of like collaboration soccer wise in terms of like the clubs, like because the major problem is that like just for me there's nothing that feels like essential viewing until the World Cup rolls around. There's no like corresponding like Super Bowl that I care about, and I think that part of the problem would be if it was just Americans playing, I would very much in the back of my mind being like, hey,
well, I think that they're going to bring
not like playing on that level yet.
I think they're going to bring MLS more to the forefront. You just knowing about it's going to help, right? Marketing for it helps, and it already is growing. It has pretty good viewership. It's on Apple. They have Messi. You're going to see probably some other people play. Like somebody said, what club is going to commit to say somehow convince Jude Bellingham to be on like LA Galaxy, right? And as he's 26 years old and he's playing in America, like that's going to change some things. But what we will see, and this is why Man City, Holland's team, is putting an academy in Dallas. What it means for your club internationally to have a national player for a country is going to mean a lot more. So we're going to get more of these clubs putting things here, backing up the MLS stuff, because they want to sign one American to their club for the viewership. They want to have one of those Americans on the national team because that's going to get there. And so they're going to train them. So I think arguably those European Premier League clubs are going to do a lot of our work for us. The issue will be having a coach who can create a team for the World Cup. And maybe there's a World Cup where there really aren't any teams. There's just collections of talents. And we somehow in that world, make it through. And that was the argument of like the first few games we had an identity. But I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see, because I don't think that the level of football is going up. The level of what we're doing here is going up. I mean, like LeBron James signed, or Clutch Sports signed Florian Balogun to his soccer. So like when LeBron's getting involved, I think one of his sons plays soccer. You're going to see the cultural shift, I think, on soccer in these communities, almost like you're seeing in golf. Like you're going to see I think NFL players' sons are going to be really a key part of this, because like there's a lot of them who are like, man, I love that I played the NFL, but I do not want my son doing this. But they're but I want them, but they're going to have the skills to be a professional athlete. So some of their kids are going to go the soccer route. That's what it's going to be very interesting to see where we get those guys. Just overall, but I do think we're just going to have a real team that wants to do it.
So in the end, who do you think was the better player, Mbappe or Haaland? Now that Messi's exiting, most likely.
It was Mbappe. I mean, Haaland had a great tournament. Haaland won the vibes of the tournament, hands down.
Yeah,
getting off or onto his plane with a taxidermy raccoon he bought in Texas. That man is going to become a god in America. Like, if you could get Haaland to play for one of these teams, like people would just freaking watch it all day long. And I do think he's going to be one of those. Like, I think someone like him is more likely from our American system than almost any other type of player. Right? Like, there's somebody who's going to be tall, a bit autistic, and just weird as hell until he's himself. And it's going to be a very interesting place. But I think he won the tournament on vibes. Or Vizinha, the Cabo Verde.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's going to play for Miami's MLS team now.
Oh, he is.
Yes, he got signed. So him and Messi are going to play together.
Now that's nice. That's actually a really nice thing.
My question is, I wonder if Harry Kane actually comes to the MLS. That might be who
Mm.
you sign because Beckham did it. So there's a thing there. He might want to play in 2036 or 2030 in that World Cup in a less primary role, but have his legs with him. I wonder if actually he's the. But again, I think we need younger. But I could see someone making a real push for Harry Kane and him saying, "Yeah, I'll take this money and I'll save my legs. I'll keep my striking. Like, I'll keep my ability to lead a team high." Because I think that's
Mhm.
the thing I think that we miss that. There's not the Americans on all our best Americans aren't leading teams. Like there's something about winning games that they don't. They're not the person who has to get everybody else in line to win a game. We'll get that guy. That'll
Mhm.
happen. But we don't have that guy right now because just where we are.
Right.
So we'll see.
But it was fun. It was truly the best World Cup that I have ever seen. It was fun. You had some upsets, the Cape Verde, the Holland, there were all these like little success stories. I truly wish that the winner could have been someone who hadn't won before, ideally from Africa or South, or like,
Yeah.
like some other from like Europe or South America. Would have been nice to see Japan make a deeper run. But overall, it was a great World Cup. I just, it was fantastic.
The best team won. They won Euros last year. They were the number one coming in. The reason I think people forgot is because just that first game against Cabo Verde, which we didn't understand what was really happening, right? We're like, well, Spain must suck now. They must
Yeah.
have just lost it, clearly. And then we realized, like, oh, no. Like, that team didn't get beat in regular time by anybody. And that's
including
crazy.
Uruguay. Like, we kind of like because they got eliminated, we're like, well, but like they were supposed to make a deep run. Like they were supposed to be one of the tournament's best, but they just weren't as good as Argentina or Uruguay or Spain
Yeah.
or Uruguay.
I mean, it's
Cape Verde.
it's so like that. I think that's some of the moments of the tournament. I think that like they talk about Algeria being in Lawrence, Kansas, so they could smoke cigarettes at the hotel and becoming like just like they're like we needed a place where we had a pool and we could smoke cigarettes in our room. And Lawrence, Kansas won, and it's a fun city. It's a cool like that's an embrace there. And they're gonna cheat to make it not cheat. They have rigged the system so that the next World Cup is actually on three continents. So it's on you're able to get South America because they're playing games in Uruguay and Argentina for like the first one. Then they're playing Morocco and Spain and Portugal. So you get Africa and you get Europe and you get South America, which means that, yep. So you're going to get that. So it means they don't have, so the next continent they have to go to is Asia. So you're going to get somewhere in the Middle East again, probably. And then because, now they've missed them all, guess where they get to come back to in 2034? The United States.
Oh yeah.
Because at a bigger
I'm sorry,
number.
like we put on the best World Cup. Like, Connor, come on. Like, like we did this the right way. We gave you Muppets at halftime. I mean, like,
if
come
we
on.
could only have an administration that would not be on stage at the end, that would be lovely.
The less we even talk about him, because no one is going to be talking about him at all. I mean, this was about the great World Cup. The fact that America is great in spite of our idiot president.
Yep.
America, we did this one right.
And I think that so let's go back to close this out a little bit with the Odyssey here. I think this is why it's so important that we do try to treat the stranger as ourselves, as that person. Like, and this exposed why you do it. Like, there are going to be people, some people suck, right? Some people sucking is not justification to do the bad thing first. It's not justification to be an asshole first, or really even second, because it only creates a cycle of violence, or even small, these little aggressions. And I think what was so great as World Cup is we got to see that most humanity is really pretty good, that really they want to interact. They're not trying to, they're not the people from the sea. They are. We are all here on this freaking this round floating rock in the sky, and we get to watch some football, some soccer.
I love it. We are Greeks. We're not people of the sea. We obey Zeus's law and we respect strangers. It was true then. It's true now.
Yep. Take all these ideas in moderation. All right. Lofty
Well,
Darwinism out.
lofty Darwinism.